Welcome, friends. You're watching Ruslan Bailov, and today we're breaking down the global situation as of April 9th, 2026. A great deal has happened today, so let's get straight into it. We'll start, as always, with the Middle East. The headline news: the President of the United States has today spoken in earnest about the possibility of the US withdrawing from NATO. His words have been picked up by media outlets around the world. NATO wasn't there when we needed them, and they probably won't be there when we need them again. Remember that, Greenland, and draw your own conclusions. The president added that America had already put the alliance to the test, and NATO had failed. We're also receiving information that the American side is already in direct talks with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, with a possible US withdrawal from the alliance as the central topic. However, it's essential to understand one thing clearly. No actual withdrawal is being planned. Today, the Wall Street Journal published a telling piece stating directly that everything we're seeing is a pressure tool. Trump wants to punish Europe for refusing to join the coalition and fight against Iran. The specific mechanism of that punishment looks as follows. The US administration is considering withdrawing American military contingents from certain NATO member states that didn't support Washington and redeploying those units to allies that did. But what is actually behind all this rhetoric? The picture that emerges is this. The US president has effectively come to Rutte with a very specific request. The first 40 days of the Middle East conflict made it abundantly clear that the coalition situation is far from brilliant. The quantity of equipment, air defense systems, and radar assets currently in the region is simply not sufficient to reliably protect allies and ensure the success of a second military campaign. Trump has reportedly asked Rutte to compile a clear inventory of all weapons and equipment, primarily air defense systems and radars, that the United States is entitled to take from European partners and transfer to the Middle East. Washington is obviously not prepared to admit that the first phase of the war against Iran ended at best in a draw. So the entire redeployment is being presented publicly as punishment for those European states that refuse to participate. First and foremost, we're talking about Spain, which did not support the United States even once throughout the campaign. Then there's France, whose President Macron spent considerable time sitting on the fence without committing to a clear position. The same list will in all likelihood include Italy, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Poland. In other words, practically everything of value is planned to be stripped from a significant portion of EU territory and repositioned in the Middle East for a more effective second campaign against Iran. The American side is also offering European partners an alternative. Washington's position is simple. If you don't want to hand over the equipment, send your own fleet to the Middle East, warships, aircraft carriers, submarines, and take responsibility for securing the Strait of Hormuz, either the equipment or the fleet. How Rutte responded remains unknown, but everything should become clear within the next few days. Meanwhile, a fierce diplomatic dispute continues over a central question. Was Lebanon included in the terms of the 2-week ceasefire or not? Vice President Vance stated that neither the US nor Israel raised the topic of Lebanon or Hezbollah during the ceasefire negotiations at all, and if Iran is prepared to jeopardize the entire agreement over Lebanon, that is, in his words, complete madness. Netanyahu confirmed directly that the temporary ceasefire with Iran in no way extends to Lebanon, that fighting there continues, and that a powerful new strike was carried out against Hezbollah in recent days. Pakistan categorically disagrees. And this is a critically important position, since it was through Pakistan that all negotiating channels between the US, Israel, and Iran were conducted throughout the past month. Pakistani intermediaries transmitted messages, organized meetings, and ultimately formalized the final ceasefire agreement. Pakistan's foreign minister stated today in direct terms, the original text of the agreement did contain a clause on Lebanon, and Lebanon was an integral part of that agreement. The country that served as the de facto arbiter of the negotiations has publicly confirmed the Iranian side's account. Following Pakistan, similar statements were made by Spain, France, Italy, the United Kingdom, and Australia. All of them insist that a ceasefire without Lebanon is incomplete and unacceptable. As things stand, only 2 states, the United States and Israel, maintain the position that Lebanon was not part of the deal. The rest of the world is inclined to believe otherwise. Iran has already published a list of documented violations: the continuation of hostilities in Lebanon, the violation of Iranian airspace by coalition drones, and strikes against oil and logistics infrastructure on the island of Lavan. The last of these stands somewhat apart. According to available information, those strikes were carried out not by the US or their direct allies, but by a number of Middle Eastern states, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, and possibly Kuwait, meaning that particular incident may not qualify as a direct violation of the US-Iran agreements. Against this backdrop, oil prices have moved sharply upward. Yesterday, following statements by the American president, prices had fallen to $85 to $86 per barrel, a decline of 15 to 20%. But already this morning prices climbed rapidly, first to 96, then to 99, and by the time this material was prepared, oil had once again broken through the $100 per barrel mark. In response, Washington announced its intention to lift restrictions on Russian oil exports and issue additional trading licenses, primarily to Indian companies. The objective is to flood the market and hold prices back from further increases for at least the next month. That window is calculated to last approximately 2 weeks, roughly how long it will take to transfer equipment from Europe to the Middle East and prepare for the second campaign. After that, either hostilities resume in full, or one of the parties accepts capitulation, which cannot be entirely ruled out, though as of today it looks unlikely. Iran announced yet another restriction on shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Since the ceasefire was declared, only 4 vessels have passed through, and several more were denied entry and forced to turn back. Iran published a new map of permissible transit routes, and sources are already reporting the possible commencement of partial mining of the strait. Russian personnel have begun evacuating from the Bushehr nuclear power plant, with no more than 50 people planned to remain on site. Coalition reconnaissance drones continue to be reported lost over the Persian Gulf. Taken together, all of this points to a resolution arriving very soon. Regarding the Israeli ground operation, Tel Aviv intends to establish a buffer zone extending to the Litani River in southern Lebanon, which will require several more months of fighting. Only when Israeli forces reach the Litani will it be possible to seriously begin talking about ending the conflict. Now let's move on to Ukraine, where today has brought significant developments both tactically and technologically. In the early hours of April 9th, Ukrainian forces carried out another large-scale drone attack, 220 drones in total. However, according to information from various sources, the attack failed to cause any meaningful damage, and Russian countermeasures dealt with the main body of the threat. Far more significant were other materials published today. A substantial volume of footage has entered open circulation documenting Russian strikes against energy infrastructure, logistics, and Ukrainian armed forces positions in the Chernihiv, Sumy, and Poltava regions. And within this material lies genuinely important technical information. The first set of footage shows combat use of Russian 4th-generation Geranium drones. This is a deeply upgraded version of the well-known platform that significantly surpasses all previous iterations. Operational range, 550 kilometers. Warhead, 50 kilograms. Cruising speed, 300 kilometers per hour. The drone is equipped with a machine vision system, and when a stable communications channel is available, allows for in-flight course corrections and retargeting in real time. The strikes were directed at energy infrastructure, and weather conditions in the footage confirm these recordings were made in the spring of 2026. One key technical detail deserves particular attention. The 4th-generation Geranium's speed of 300 kilometers per hour brings it right up to the threshold that Ukrainian developers themselves describe as the upper limit for their interception systems. According to Ukrainian sources, their anti-drone complexes are capable of intercepting targets traveling at up to 300 kilometers per hour. This means the 4th-generation Geranium is already operating at the very boundary of Ukrainian interceptors' capability, and any individual interception in this speed range is no longer guaranteed. The true sensation of today, however, was a second piece of footage, among the first publicly available recordings of the 5th-generation Geranium in combat use. This is a qualitatively different machine. In its appearance and flight characteristics, it far more closely resembles a cruise missile than a conventional kamikaze drone. Operational range, 600 kilometers. Warhead, 60 kilograms. Speed, 350 kilometers per hour. The footage includes a feed directly from the drone's own camera, demonstrating the quality of the machine vision system and in-flight control capability. Those 350 kilometers per hour is a decisive figure. At that speed, this drone moves beyond the reach of the Ukrainian interception systems known to us. If fifth-generation geraniums begin to be deployed at truly mass scale, the situation in the airspace above the front line and throughout the rear could change substantially. By all indications, the Russian side plans to progressively replace first, second, and third-generation geraniums with these new machines throughout 2026. The question, as always, comes down to production volumes. A few dozen per month, no tactical shift. Hundreds per month, an entirely different conversation, and one quite capable of affecting the nature of combat operations along the entire line of contact. On the Zaporizhzhia axis, Russian units continue pressing toward Orikhiv from the east and west. Footage volume is significant, but cartographic adjustments remain limited. The exception is the northern Zaporizhzhia direction. Airstrikes against Ukrainian positions have been recorded near Kolodezno, confirmed as spring 2026. The map will shortly be updated. The infiltration zone on this section will be removed and the corresponding tree lines returned to Ukrainian control. Further north, near Andriivka, FPV drone strikes against Ukrainian equipment in movement have been published, suggesting this settlement has exited the grey zone and is now under Ukrainian armed forces control. On the Dobrovolya sector, pro-Ukrainian sources are themselves reporting continued forward movement by Russian units and an expanding infiltration zone, a significant signal that the situation here is genuinely unstable. No cartographic adjustments for now, as the data was incorporated earlier, but the trend of compression of Ukrainian positions is evident. On the Kostiantynivka axis, a small but telling adjustment. East of the city, Russian units have consolidated a substantial strongpoint west of Stupochki and near Predtekin, while the infiltration zone expands directly toward Kostiantynivka itself. The Russian side continues methodically reducing operational space around the city. On the Sloviansk axis, no significant changes over the past 24 hours, but adjustments have been made near Kalinivka. Russian units have gained a foothold at strongpoints west and southwest of that village, maintaining steady pressure on Ukrainian positions east of Mykolaiivka and gradually shifting the line of contact toward Ry-Oleksandriivka. On the Kupiansk sector, no formal map changes today, but several important details warrant attention. Both pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian sources are publishing notable footage confirming that Russian units are methodically drawing closer to the Oskil River, corroborated by independent cartographic assessments from several analytical groups. That said, insufficient verified evidence exists to confirm Russian control over specific settlements such as Novosinov, Hlushkivka, Kovsharivka, Kupiansk-Vuzlovyi, and Podoli. The corresponding materials may appear in the very near future, at which point the map will be updated accordingly. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave your likes. All the best to you.